We are having a conversation with Jimmy Wales, and he is the founder of the Wikipedia. Mr. Wales, you have said that in order to understand your ideas about Wikipedia, one has to understand the works of Friedrich Hayek. How come? Why is that?
So one of the major insights that Hayek had was about the use of information, the use of knowledge in society, in an economy. And his view was that the failure of central planning was inevitable simply because to communicate all the information into a central body who then makes all the decisions is less efficient than instead pushing the decision making out to the endpoints, out to the participants. This is in a lot of ways the way Wikipedia functions. Normally what we think about in the creation of an encyclopedia or another reference work is that we want to communicate all the information into a small group of experts who make the decisions. Whereas rather with Wikipedia, the idea is let's put the decision making out at the endpoints, out at the level of the users, the level of the authors of the article, and have an open system, an open framework for sharing information. It turns out in a lot of ways it works a lot better, and that's really the link that I see between the ideas of Hayek and my ideas about Wikipedia.
And speaking of information, I studied with a bunch of great guys from Africa and Asia, and when in Washington DC we arrived to the store to buy stuff for our houses, they were very annoyed because all of these choices, all of these different brands, and I have the feeling that many people is annoyed because of too much information out there. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing because obviously the benefits to having fast access to good quality information are enormous. I think what may annoy people more than information is noise, and it's often hard to tell the difference between information and noise, but lots and lots and lots of what's out there is simply noise. And what we really need, and I actually think this is one of the reasons that Wikipedia has become so popular, what we really need in many, many circumstances is for someone to just give us a nice summary. If I type Thomas Jefferson into Google and I'm looking for something, they return, several million web pages, some of which mention Thomas Jefferson and this and the other. But one of the things I probably want is a nice summary. Who is Thomas Jefferson? What did he do? Just give me that basic information and give me some pointers of where to go next. And that's one of the main functions of an encyclopedia. Now, it's interesting when we think about the role of an encyclopedia for people who speak English or Spanish, for example, because we do have massive access to large amounts of information. What's interesting about Wikipedia and the project is that it's really global. And in a lot of languages, I think in a lot of cultures, we're going to play a very different role. In Swahili, for example, that article about Thomas Jefferson may be the first thing that's ever been written about Thomas Jefferson that's accessible to people in the Swahili language. So the problem that we're solving there is not necessarily the problem of, oh, I'm overwhelmed with information, I need a concise guide to it. It's, wow, I don't have any information at all. I really need information. I need the basics at least to get started. So it's really interesting to see how that may play out.
Another Wales phrase that I like is one about the importance of incentives when dealing with people changing attitudes or habits And are incentives more important than rules?
I think incentives are absolutely fundamental, and rules really only make sense if the rules are in some ways consistent and helping people to align their incentives, and that's the most effective and most powerful type of rule. We see this in many, many different contexts. So, just to pick one potentially controversial issue, but for example, the prohibition of marijuana. Well, we can prohibit it, we can make all the rules we want, but the fact is the incentives are in place for people to make it and distribute it and sell it, whether there's a rule against it or not. And if we really want to change people's behavior and say, oh, well, this is an unhealthy activity that you shouldn't be doing, we should go back to the drawing board and say, look, really, these rules aren't really helping. Now, of course, rules often come with some kind of incentives attached to them. You know, we're going to throw you in jail or something like this. Now, when I talk about these kinds of things, normally it's not in the context of an issue like that. It's really in the context of thinking about social structures in a volunteer framework on the web, people coming together to do things, and simply making a rule that says Wikipedia entries should be high quality. Okay, well, that sounds nice. That's a nice rule, but it doesn't actually solve anything, right? Instead, what we really have to think about is who is coming to work in Wikipedia? What are they finding good and bad about the project? The people who are causing trouble, how do we make sure that there's a little bit of a disincentive for them to cause trouble? People who are trying to do good work, how do we make sure there's an incentive for them to do good work? I'm a big believer in soft security, in the idea that you can't just make up a set of rules and expect things to happen. Instead, you have to really think about cost-benefit analysis and make it just a little cheaper to do good and a little more expensive to do bad, and then amazing things can flow from that.
And changing subject, and finally, do you see yourself as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, definitely. I see myself as an entrepreneur. I mean, I'm the founder of this project, which is, of course, a nonprofit Wikipedia, but I also have a for-profit company. But if you ask me the core essence of what an entrepreneur is about, it isn't about for-profit versus nonprofit. It's about looking at the world and seeing some exciting possibilities and deciding to take steps in organizing something or leading something to make that change in the world that you think is beneficial. For me, that's the core of being an entrepreneur.
Thank you very much for sharing with us these ideas, and thank you.